for being here today. Really appreciate it. So to introduce myself, my name is Friyana. I'm a law graduate from Middlesex University, Dubai, so just graduated. So we thought that why don't we interview yourself and get a gist about, who you are as an individual and why you're in this field. So maybe you could start off by telling us a bit about, what you do, who you are, and where you've come from.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Euan Lloyd. I'm partner and head of construction at Tamimi. I suppose in terms of background, I'm a UK qualified solicitor. I'm also qualified in Australia, and so I took a kind of traditional route, basically. So I went to university, did law, did the legal practice course, did a training contract in London, worked in London for maybe 4 years, and relocated to Australia, in Sydney, which is great. And then just a bit about some places where I've worked. So I've worked in Australia, and then I moved from Australia to Dubai. I kind of show my age a bit now. Then from Dubai, I moved to Singapore, and then I relocated from Singapore back to UAE about 11 years ago.
Wow,
so I've worked in different jurisdictions, and I suppose doing construction and infrastructure, energy. I suppose what you do find is the concepts are quite international. So the principles and the contracts and so on that apply to a project in the UK wouldn't be dissimilar to a project in say Saudi Arabia or Mauritius or someplace like that. So it's fairly universal, and the same issues come up on a regular basis. That's kind of a quick kind of snapshot of who I am and a little bit about my background.
And then why law? Usually for students now, it's usually parents saying get into law. It's like a stable, workplace.
Yeah.
But years back when you started off, why did you choose law? And was it a passion or was it just like a
No. It's a good point. So I'm from the UK, and in the UK you do A levels, right? And
yes.
I did English, history, French, and I really enjoyed them. But you kind of think about what's the next step. So if you do like a degree in English, history, or French, what do you do afterwards when you graduate? And so I thought, with law, it's a defined career path, and also it kind of ties in with kind of history and analysing issues and so on. English in terms of expressing yourself. So it kind of married together, and it's been good. I've enjoyed it. It's been. Yeah.
Because I think when I thought about law, it was usually, I saw this video about like the Norway justice system, and I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to get into law, and then everyone was like, oh, law is just like, if you want to give justice, it's human rights.
Yeah.
And then I realized that's not really it. There's much more to, giving back, and you can do that with other types of law.
Yeah.
So try to get a gist of that. And then ideally, I wanted to know, did you always think about construction, or did you feel like, there was another path where you wanted to go towards in law, or it was just like anything in law?
Yeah, it's kind of circumstance. So when you do a training contract, you do 4 seats.
Yeah.
And the final seat I did was construction.
All right.
It is kind of circumstance as well, and they kind of offered me a job in construction upon qualification. So it's kind of easy from that perspective.
Yeah.
But also I kind of quite liked construction as well, because I suppose a few reasons. Those kind of one of them is that it's so kind of tangible. Yeah. So if you kind of negotiate and sign a contract, then something gets built, you can actually see the product of that, right? Yeah. And then the other thing as well is, like I said, construction law is so international. It's quite a good passport to maybe kind of working overseas. Yeah. I was always kind of quite keen to leave the UK mainly because of the weather and the commute and all that kind of stuff. So it's and I'm just kind of backtracking a little bit. When I was at university, I spent a year in Singapore studying in Singapore.
All right, that's
and
interesting.
So that kind of got me interested in kind of international law and kind of projects and that kind of stuff. So I suppose it's kind of a case of kind of circumstance and having some interests, and they kind of coincide, and that can take you down a particular path. And
that is usually like your motivation towards what you do right now, and you believe like individuals, when they take something up, they should have motivation to what they do?
Yeah. So I think you've really got to be kind of dedicated and invest the time. And I think as well, you've just got to be open to opportunities as well. So when opportunities do present themselves, be kind of willing to take them, and sometimes it's a case of maybe kind of stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit. But I think, before you take a step, it can be a little bit daunting. But once you do take that step, I think it's very rewarding. I think it's very unusual for somebody to take a step outside of their comfort zone and for things not to work out. Usually, invariably, I think it's a very positive thing to do and very beneficial.
And I think that's going to act like as a part of motivation for us, because usually we're very shied away.
Yeah.
At university, we said that do ABC. I think we don't really get out much, and when we do, we were like, oh my god, there's so much out there, I'm confused, I'm overwhelmed. So do you have any tips in dealing with such challenges where people get overwhelmed when you're getting a lot of work to do, or you're in the real world?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds really kind of simplistic, but I think just don't be overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Just kind of embrace the opportunity or the opportunities, because fundamentally you're just dealing with people, right? And people aren't that scary. So as long as you're positive and you're willing to embrace the opportunity, I think there's so many opportunities out there. I think it's kind of a case of looking out for the opportunities, and once they do arise, really acting on them. And I think, I think as well, there's. I mean, of course, I've not been to university for quite a long time, but I do remember there is a gap between, because with the UK system you do a law degree, you do the LPC, and the LPC is supposed to be kind of bridging the gap between academic law and legal profession. Even then, there's still quite a. I remember thinking there's still quite a large gap between the LPC and actually doing a training contract. And I think it's inevitable, and it's just something which, and bridging that gap just kind of comes with kind of experience and kind of working on the job, doing the job. But a lot of it's kind of people skills, just kind of meeting people, interacting with people, being positive, being willing to help. It's all that. I think a lot of it's down to having a very, very kind of positive and can-do mindset.
Understood.
Yeah.
And ideally, when you speak about people, did you face different type of people when you were in, Asia, and then when you were in the Middle East while you were in the UK, or were they all the same type of mindset, or did they have different perspectives?
Yeah, you meet all sorts of different people. It's just different ages. People of different ages with different perspectives, sometimes from different backgrounds. But fundamentally, I think everybody. I personally believe everybody's kind of decent. People are good fundamentally, and okay, maybe they can present themselves a little bit differently. But if you do kind of speak to people on a personal level, and fundamentally, if you've got the same objective. So if you're a lawyer, you're acting for a client. You're acting in the best interest of the client, so these kind of interests align. And if you're working for a law firm, you're working for the best interests of the law firm as well. So you've got a kind of a common goal. So I think once you kind of cut away the, I suppose the optical or the superficial differences in terms of presentation and so on, fundamentally it's all very similar. I think no matter where you are, if you're UK, Asia, Australia, Middle East, I think it's very similar.
All right. And is there any way do you think that students now can, make sure that those differences don't occur? Because now when we come to university, we see people of so many nationalities, people with different cultures. So sometimes we're quite hesitant to speak to different people, probably who don't look like us or who don't, are not in our social norm groups.
Yeah.
So how do you think that students right now should, be able to overcome that and, go and speak to people?
So I'm not sure how it works here at this university, but if you're talking social events and that kind of stuff, because I think you were telling me as well, you've got 5,000 students from different backgrounds, 120 different nationalities.
Yes.
So I think maybe the university's got kind of social networking events, that kind of thing. So I think it's very good for students to maybe get involved in these kind of forums to meet different people from different cultures. But fundamentally, it's kind of a small step of stepping out of your comfort zone and engaging with different people from different backgrounds, different cultures. But ultimately, I think nowadays the differences between people from different parts of the world are probably diminishing on account of, because the world's so interconnected nowadays, isn't it? Everything with the internet, kind of YouTube, all this kind of stuff. Okay, there are still some differences, but fundamentally, I think a lot of people are kind of on the same page, and they've got the same beliefs and the same outlooks, same aspirations, the same concerns, the same fears. So I think it's just kind of a case of, I mean, it is what it is, kind of engaging with everybody and just getting along.
Definitely, I agree with that. And ideally, when we speak about students, we do have obviously, university events, etc. And I think a lot of students at university are quite hesitant in sense of to get out of, like, for example, we're law students. We're always told that, do competitions in law or, write the newsletter or be part of the Mooting society. So at the end of the day, a lot of us just do law-related stuff. They don't really get out and do other things that would just, enhance their social skills or enhance their soft skills or just meet with our people from different perspectives. So do you think students should start doing that? Because now, the world's evolving. There's a lot of tech coming out. Companies, even now, they just don't want someone who knows the law. They want someone who knows a bit more. So
100%. So when I was kind of applying for training contracts and that kind of stuff, even then, a big thing was the stuff you did outside of law.
Yeah.
And so to the extent you can kind of travel, it goes back to your question before about kind of different cultures. So if you can travel and experience different cultures, different ways of life, experience different things, that's really valuable. And I think as well, if you can maybe do kind of part-time jobs, I know it's not that easy here because of employment restrictions and so on, but to the extent it's possible to work outside of law, I think that's really valuable. So when I was a student, for example, I worked as I had a few jobs, so like kind of summer jobs and that kind of stuff. So I worked as I did some kind of renovation works in a hotel. I worked in a pub. I was a waiter. I worked as a football steward. But the key thing was all these things, all these jobs, all these experiences, they involved interacting with people. That was really valuable. And so I think as well, when you get into the legal profession, in some ways it's not really so much about law. It's more about the way you kind of present yourself, the way you kind of articulate concepts, explain issues. So it's all kind of wrapped up in the same thing, albeit with a legal overlay. So I think the extent to which you can have law as a background or law as a foundation, but supplement that with other kind of real world experiences, I think that's really valuable. And I think employers look quite closely at that as well.
And I think that's quite interesting because a lot of people I know and myself started off with just doing law. Go into law, just do every law competition in the book, do every legal internship out there, and then reality hit us, and they were like, "No, you're not just supposed to do this. You're supposed to do other things."
I mean, the stuff you're doing, like kind of moots, writing articles, that kind of stuff, is really valuable without question. But I think that's really kind of part of the equation. The other part of the equation is like the real world part of the equation, if you like, because the clients are from the real world as well, and the clients are the ones who are going to pay the bills. They're like the customers, if you like. So you've got to be on their kind of wavelength as well, So I think the extent you can get some experience outside of law, I think that's really valuable.
All right, and ideally you were talking about clients, so I want to move on to my next question, which says that I think you've worked in-house also, and you've worked in law firms. So usually in law firms your client is an outsourced party who has a problem, but in-house your company is your client in simple terms. So then what do you see as a difference in both the opportunities that you work for, and if there were any challenges or if there was some distinct features, or were they all the same to you?
No, they are. I suppose, there are kind of similarities because it is law, but there are differences. And I suppose if you're working for a law firm, the work is a lot more you've got different clients, so it's more diverse from that perspective. So, for example, the job I'm doing, the role I'm filling now, we've got clients from different sectors. Different stakeholders we act for, like governments, owners, developers, main contractors, subcontractors, consultants, designers, suppliers, utility companies, all sorts of different clients, albeit in the construction and energy space. So you've got to kind of look at their kind of situation from a kind of slightly different lens. So if you're the contractor, you've got different concerns to the employer, for example. But if you're working in-house, as you say, you've got one client, but the work you do tends to be a lot more varied. Mm-hmm. So right now, I just kind of specialise in construction, energy infrastructure. But when I was working in-house, I was kind of doing all sorts of different things. So basically, the company just undergone an MBO, management buyout. I was doing a lot of kind of corporate commercial issues, and also there's a lot of kind of financing. There was kind of refinancing, and we had some equity investors. So the work I was doing there was a lot more diverse. We had quite a few employment issues as well, disputes, IP as well. So it was a lot kind of broader. But then because I was kind of working for one client, it was more restricted in that way.
All right.
So I suppose each of the options are kind of they're kind of broader and more restrictive in different ways, if you see what I mean.
All right. And do you have any favorites? Do you prefer in-house than law firms, or vice versa?
I prefer working for law firms because I had a really good time working in-house, and I also got great connections with the company I worked for, and I'm actually going to next week. They've got it's their 50th anniversary, so having an event in Singapore, so I'm attending that, which is nice. So I keep in contact with them, and they're actually a client. But I think, it's a right or wrong answer, but I think if you're a lawyer, I think it's better to be a fee earner, and you're actually kind of generating fees. Sure. That's my kind of personal preference. And I also like the ability to work for different clients, and you can meet different people that way, because you can work in-house, you can deal with the same people on a repeat basis. But for example, we've got hundreds of clients, so we meet all sorts of different people. And the other thing I enjoy about my job is it's BD, marketing, meeting people.
Right.
Yeah, that's good, and it's it's definitely more enjoyable doing that sort of stuff than drafting contracts and reviewing contracts. And you don't really do that if you work in-house, because there's a business to develop, right?
Yeah, agreed. I think a lot of people we speak to nowadays have mentioned that the newer generation right now prefers working 9 to 5. They want 2 days off. They want to work from home. They want to work remote. Do you feel like that is a mentality students who are graduating should keep, or should they try getting into the hardcore world for a couple of years, and then decide? Because a lot of people a lot of people I know are trying to go into certain jobs in law firms, which is restrictive to 9 to 5, getting weekends off, you're working hybrid, or they're going in-house for roles. I think I know a couple of people who are working in Coca-Cola as a paralegal or in other companies as a paralegal, because they're getting that work-life stability, but they're not really interacting with people much because they're just in their own surrounding. So do you think students should go in-house or go at law firms when they begin their journey?
Look, I think it kind of depends what opportunities arise.
All right.
I think they're both. I think if you were to work for a law firm, it would be more kind of academic legal. But if you were to kind of work in-house, it'd be more commercial, and they're both equally beneficial. But your friends working for Coca-Cola or Pepsi, these kind of roles, I think they'd be working closely with the business. They'd kind of understand what the key concerns of the business are, and so they kind of understand that a lot more. But I think one of the issues is if you do just work, and this is why it's kind of beneficial for me to work in-house. You get to see the bigger picture. So you can one criticism which does come up from time to time of lawyers is that the advices or the deliverables they provide aren't commercial enough. So they may be kind of perfect from a legal perspective, but from a usability perspective, they may not be that practical. So if you can kind of marry both together, both having the legal correct and making it kind of so it applies to the commercial.
I think that's something I even learned at the opportunity I had at Linklaters,
where
I was working in energy and infrastructure, where they gave me a case study to work on, and I was looking at it from a legal perspective, not as much as from a commercial perspective. And then she's like, no, put a bit more emphasis on a commercial perspective, because legally they can do it, yes, but do they have the funds to do it? Does it fit their budget? Or, is the stakeholder structure that way? Is it going to be implemented? I was like, okay, wait, there's this also, which I was quite unaware of. And then when I learned about it, I was like, okay, now I understand. Now I understand why commercial is important, why legal has to go in hand with it. I think we need a bit more about that in the real world, for students at least. They don't really get the concept. I think that's why this interview series is something what we're trying to push on, so they understand, why you need commercial, why you need legal, why you need to do a certain type of role.
I think, 100%. I think on that as well. So in my kind of current job, it's so important to kind of understand what the client's kind of instructions really mean and what the background circumstances are. And so, sometimes clients email us and ask us to do certain things, or provide an advice on something, and sometimes the real issues and the true background, which can be very important, doesn't always kind of come across in email communication.
Correct.
So I think it's so important to have a call with them, just so you can understand what their objectives are. Because look, it may be a situation whereby there's a clear legal solution. So, for example, maybe they could terminate a contract, but maybe termination is not what they want because of a long-term relationship with that counterparty. It's all these kind of things. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a case of. So I think in some ways it's maybe it's kind of wrong to kind of think of us as pure lawyers. Right. Maybe it's better to kind of think of us as more kind of business advisors. Right. So we kind of work with the business and try to facilitate the achievement of the commercial objectives. So I think it's. It's the kind of two parts. So you've got the legal part, the commercial part. Just got to bring them together.
All right.
And bridge the gap.
All right, that's interesting. And how do you feel about at university? Of course, all universities mostly have the basic norm of studying and showcasing the basic type of modules. So that's tort, or that's like corporate law, or you're just doing contract law, public law. Yeah. What aspect do you think universities should change so they're able to incorporate a bit more about this real world at academy?
So here in the UAE, did you look at like Dubai law, UAE law? Is that a module as well? Is that what
no, because we're at international university. They don't really teach us the proper Dubai codes law. It's not even the DIFC law is taught at university. They mention about it, but it's not really taught or done in case studies. So it's usually just international law and UK law that's taught to us.
Yeah, I think for this campus it'd be quite useful to maybe look at UAE law and also Saudi law as well. Saudi's such a big market nowadays.
Correct.
And then of course Saudi kind of brought in the civil transactions law in December last year. So I think it'd be quite useful for students to have a bit of, particularly for students who've got aspirations of working in this region. I think it'd be good to have that on the curriculum maybe, and also a little bit about kind of civil law, because there are differences between civil and common law. Yeah. And that became very, very useful. But but I suppose at the same time I've kind of worked in common law and civil law jurisdictions, and you do kind of find although the concepts come under different names and different guises, fundamentally the concepts they overlap, they're similar. Yeah. So it's. But I think that might be kind of quite useful, because even with I don't know what your experiences were at Linklaters were, but I imagine quite a few of the contracts they were involved in were probably governed by UE law or had some UE law components. So I think that's really useful.
All right. I think that's actually something we'll speak about to our faculty about.
Yeah.
Mention it to them. Why don't you try implementing something of the sort? Because we do get a bit hazed out. We're like, oh, this exists. We didn't learn about this, so can you help us out? And we eventually learn by internships. Yeah. It takes a while, and then definitely some people focus a lot on academics. Some students wouldn't do internships or part-time jobs, while they're studying. They usually do it after they graduate. And then sometimes it's a bit too late for them because they're quite struggling, they're living by themselves, they need to get a job, and it's too late for them to learn sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's best to do these things concurrently. So, I'm not sure what the load is like in terms of kind of lectures and tutorials and that kind of stuff, but to the extent there is time to do things outside of law, outside of studying, I think that's definitely beneficial.
Oh, yeah, that's quite interesting. I think that's something we'll take back definitely.
Yeah.
I'll probably say it personally to individuals I know. But I think like as the world's evolving right now, we see that a lot of tech is evolving, a lot of industries are evolving. Some are diminishing, they'll probably vanish in the next couple of years, and some will expand. So why do you think what would the changes in the construction, energy and infrastructure industry be? Especially, maybe not from a legal perspective, but generally, that we would face maybe in the Middle East and worldwide.
So AI is a big thing. So in terms of the whole process becoming a lot more efficient, particularly from a design perspective. Well, design's part of it, because I suppose this is a good thing. In the past, there were quite a few disputes around design issues, design defects, that kind of stuff. But nowadays, on account of AI and kind of clash detection systems and building modelling systems, these design inconsistencies are being eradicated. So if there are any issues with designs, they tend to be kind of picked up, and these are addressed. Also, in terms of construction, the actual construction process itself on sites, you're seeing the use of robotics, for example, in terms of site supervision and inspection of works. A lot of that stuff's being done electronically by drones. So it's kind of a case of using AI in the construction sector, but also in terms of law firms as well, and the legal profession. It's AI is taking hold as well. There's certain tools and certain programs you can use to conduct fairly kind of detailed research. And so you can kind of type in a question, and they can and the AI can produce a fairly advanced advice. And advice would be by no means perfect, but it would typically provide some quite useful authorities, some quite useful perspectives. So I think it's basically AI kind of driving efficiency. But I think as industries do become more efficient, people do diversify, and that will create new opportunities for the likes of us, for people,
So it's in simple means it's simplifying the administrative work for us to focus on other stuff.
Yeah. So I think maybe in the future. Maybe in the future. Yeah, like you say, I think the more kind of commoditized aspects of legal work may be done by AI, and lawyers will be engaged to undertake the more kind of complex issues. I don't know if this will happen, but there is talk about there being AI judges.
All right. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so
interesting.
Yeah, so I think it's just very theoretical right now, but there's some talk about a system whereby each party submits their pleadings, and then the AI judge analyses the facts, the pleadings, analyses the governing law, and comes out with a judgment. So I don't know if that can happen in the future, but I think an issue with that is the thing about AI. It kind of cuts away the emotional side of things. There's a lot of emotional intelligence involved, and so I don't know how that would be kind of addressed in AI. But it's kind of quite interesting though. And look, I suppose we're having this conversation now in 2024. Who knows what happened in 2034 or 2044? Who knows? Who knows?
The tech is evolving so fast, we don't know what will be next.
No.
How is it going to go ahead? I think last year in one of the ADR classes, one of our faculty was speaking about, I think, what was it? Online chat gaming rooms.
Right.
Where your avatar is playing a game and somebody hurts your avatar. So can you sue the person's avatar for hurting your avatar when you're not physically harmed? And can that go? And there was a big discussion last year where they were talking about, it's an AI world, so you can't sue, and there'll be a certain regulation that's coming out. And I was like, how is that possible? You're not physically harmed for something to happen, but then there might be mental aspects. You might be so traumatized by what would have happened.
You'd have to. Well, yeah, it's interesting, but unless you kind of suffer any substantiated loss,
Correct.
it's very difficult to actually recover that, and in the UAE at least as well.
Yeah.
Very difficult to recover indirect and consequential losses.
Definitely.
So unless you can actually show you've suffered some clear and substantiated detriment, I think it'd be difficult.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting.
But who knows? Who knows in the future? Maybe things will evolve. I don't know.
I think the future is quite interesting to look at, yet scary at the same time, because you don't know where you're going. But I think we're positive about it.
Yeah.
I think that's like a good thing that we're looking at it from a perspective.
Definitely.
And I think students right now are more tech driven, especially now they want to do things the smart way instead of the hard way. And I think that's okay to do. But what's your perspective? Do you think they should work simultaneously, use like a smart method and like, put a bit of effort into it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've come across this a few times when people do rely on AI solutions and it's the outcome's wrong. So it's okay to use AI as a basis or as a guide, but it's got to be checked quite carefully. And some kind of, I suppose a few kind of simple examples. If you do some kind of, even something as simple as changing words in a contract, you say, replace all. You can get some quite embarrassing, depending what the changes are. Yeah. You get some quite embarrassing changes. I've seen that kind of stuff as well in contracts. People just, it's changing. Was it? I forgot what it was, but it kind of came out with something which was quite embarrassing.
I think we've heard stories from like even faculty where they mention that there's some paper that they read where there's something completely weird. I think there are emails or like papers where they're saying, "Hi, please find the response below," and then there's people like actually typing the ChatGPT response and forget it, like remove the first part.
Yeah.
So that's quite hilarious to see when we go through emails or when we receive such documentations.
Yeah.
And even when you read certain emails or papers, you're like, wait, I feel this is AI. Like I feel this is ChatGPT because I know how you write or I know how you speak to me. I've met you before, or even if I've not met you, there's a certain way a normal individual writes, and this doesn't really seem like that. So that's quite interesting. But like for people and like students, graduates, or even legal professionals who want to switch careers, why do you think the infrastructure and construction industry stands out? Like why should people go towards it, at least explore it, if not something?
So it's I suppose in this part it's very kind of cyclical of kind of geographically driven in some ways. So if you look at the UK, for example, or most of Europe, a lot of it's kind of developed and it's all kind of built. Okay, there's got to be some infrastructure work and that kind of stuff, but nothing that major. But in this part of the world, the UAE, Saudi, Middle East, there's so much construction work taking place right now. And I think it's going to continue for the next 10, 20 years. So from that perspective, a lot of projects will be kind of procured for the next 10, 20 years. I think it's good from that perspective for sure. And I mean, this is what kind of happened. The company I worked for in Singapore, they were headquartered in Singapore, but because Singapore and Southeast Asia is fairly developed, they decided to do more stuff in the Middle East. And so it's kind of a case of just kind of identifying where the construction markets are and kind of going there, because when there are kind of projects, there's going to be work. And of course, with construction, it's not just about drafting, negotiating the contracts. There's always kind of claims, there are always disputes. So it's basically kind of following the work, following where the actual construction activity is taking place. So I think in this region there'll be a lot of construction work for the foreseeable future. And no matter what happens in terms of AI and so on, I think there will always be disputes. There will always be issues in the construction space. It's just the way things are. Just the way the industry's set up. It's fairly adversarial.
Well, that's quite interesting to hear. I think that's like a good takeaway for us, especially as students. I think to end off, I would like to ask, as someone who's already been working for a long period of time, who's working in different sectors, in different countries, what is the one advice, or maybe more, you'd like to give to students and graduates getting out, whether that's, about soft skills, about industries, or just generally, what do you think we should be looking at or aiming to achieve when we're out of university?
I think it goes back to the questions you're asking at the start. I really think it's I think the kind of soft skills and kind of world experiences and embracing opportunities, I think those are key. Because I think in some ways at university you do a degree for 3 years, and everything's kind of structured. It's all well organised. It's kind of clear what you have to do. So you've got like a timetable, and you've got to, you know, when the exams are, you've got to revise for these exams, you've got to prepare for these tutorials and so on. Right. And that's all great, but as soon as you kind of leave university, it's like a kind of a blank canvas, and that structure kind of falls away. Yeah. So I think it's a case of maybe kind of preparing yourself for when you do leave university and you then become kind of self-sufficient. And so I think it's a case of kind of building up contacts, connections, experiencing as much as you can, and I think to the extent possible, kind of building up kind of soft skills, maybe kind of doing kind of part-time jobs or jobs outside of law. Like I know people, for example, who worked in retail. That's hugely kind of beneficial because you're dealing with customers all the time. So I think, so to me, I think that's really important, and as well, I think it's really important to kind of, like we said as well, like law's only kind of part of it. So in kind of legal practice, it's about kind of marrying up a legal solution with commercial objectives. So it all kind of goes hand in hand. Like law's only kind of part of a bigger picture. So the extent that you can get out there and kind of embrace different cultures, different opportunities, different ways of thinking, I think it's hugely beneficial. I think it'll stand any student in excellent stead, you know. And also just don't be afraid of stepping out your comfort zone, because once you do that, I'm sure it'll be an extremely rewarding experience.
Right. I think the one question I feel like students should ask themselves throughout the university journey is, you know, why am I doing this degree? What is my future goal? I feel a lot of us don't ask that question to ourselves. Maybe we ask it when we start uni, and then we forget about it and we remember it like 3 years after we graduate, because we're so involved in, like, you know, as you said, courseworks and assignments and that structure. We kind of forget why we took this degree in the first place. And then obviously when you take the degree, you realize, okay, maybe I wanted to become a barrister, I don't want to do that anymore, I want to become a solicitor. Or I don't want to work, I wanted to work in ADR, but now I want to work in another industry. So I feel like these questions are something they should ask. Do you think that's something they should be doing?
Yeah. So I think it's a case of being open to change as well. Because when you first kind of set, like you were saying, when you first kind of set out, maybe you think you'd like to be a barrister, you decide maybe you prefer to be a solicitor. And like you say, maybe your interest changes as time goes by. So I think it's a case of just being open to that, and being fairly pragmatic as well. And it kind of ties in with being open to opportunity as well. But you know, even when you qualify as well, it's possible to switch discipline. So I know somebody, for example, who was working in house for an Abu Dhabi government entity. I was kind of focused on kind of dispute resolution, and for whatever reason he decided it wasn't really for him. He didn't like the acrimony, I suppose. So he's kind of switched to IP. I was working for a law firm specialising in IP law. So I think it's a case of just, you know, people evolve as well, of course. So this is kind of a case of being attuned to what you think you want to do, and if you're not enjoying something, there's no point doing it because you won't do your best at it, you know. So I think it's a case of just not being kind of scared to change, you know, just being flexible and just knowing yourself, see what opportunities are out there, and just adapting and acting accordingly.
Right. I think that's going to be my takeaway for today. I think that's something I'll probably take away in the sense of adapting to change. But before we end for today, is there anything else you'd like to tell the students, or something they should be knowing from your perspective?
I think law. I think law's it's a great. It's a good career. You know, I've really enjoyed it so far. You know, it's allowed me to travel, have interesting people, It's been good, so I would recommend it. But I think the key thing is just like I keep saying, just be open to change, be adaptable, spot the opportunities, because ultimately it's I suppose each one of us we're all in charge of our own destinies. Nobody else can look out for yourself. So it's a case of you just kind of taking control of your life, of your career, working out what kind of works for you, and just going for it. Really, I think, and the other thing as well, just doing your best at all times. And just having a positive outlook. I think those are the key takeaways.
Right. Okay, that's interesting to know. I think a lot of people need to. I think we'll have to put this in bulletin points when we're posting it out and let them know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the wrap for today. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Pleasure.
I know you took a lot of time and you're traveling a lot too. But I think they're going to like this series. They're going to like listening to this YouTube channel interview, and they're going to get things out of it, because usually they don't really hear a lot of this at university, and if they do hear it, they don't implement it. So I think now we're going to start with that implementation process. Tell them, please jump out into the real world, get out of your comfort zone and do stuff.
And it's not that scary either. Once you take the first step, it gets a lot easier. That was really good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.